I sip my coffee slowly, watching the sun stretch gold across the street I now own. The soft silk of my blouse brushes against my arm as I lean on the balcony railing, a faint breeze carrying the scent of freshly cut grass from the park below. Everything looks calm, almost ordinary, but I know better. Every house, every sidewalk, every brick here has a story, and mine used to belong to someone else. My phone buzzes. I glance at the screen. It's her. My cousin. The one who thought she could take everything from me. The one who once walked through my front door, as if it belonged to her. My thumb hovers over the screen. Part of me wants to ignore it, to let her stew in her own assumptions. But another part, well, that part enjoys a little reckoning. I remember that day vividly. The phone call that changed everything, the smirk she wore like a crown, my parents' silence echoing in my ears. It used to make my chest tighten, my hands tremble. Now, I feel a different kind of weight, the kind that comes from knowing exactly how far you've come. I take a slow breath, feeling the smooth coffee cup warm between my palms, and I let a small, ironic smile curve my lips. Today, the street belongs to me, and soon, she'll realize that taking my house wasn't the end. It was the beginning. I was 22, fresh out of college, full of ideas and dreams that seemed too big for the little house on Elm Street. That house, my sanctuary, my family home, was where every memory of my childhood lingered. The smell of my mother's cinnamon rolls on Sunday mornings, the sound of my father's laughter echoing through the hallway. I never imagined it would become the battleground for betrayal. It started with small things, a comment here, a suggestion there, but it quickly escalated. My cousin, Lauren, had a way of making her intentions invisible until it was too late. She moved in under the guise of helping out, staying longer than anyone thought was polite. Then one day, she signed papers claiming ownership, her signature bold and final. I remember staring at the documents like they were a different language, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped them. My parents didn't say a word, they didn't stop her, and worse, they didn't defend me. I felt dismissed, humiliated, and completely alone. I remember sinking onto the couch, the old quilt still smelling faintly of lavender, and feeling the sting of tears I refused to let fall. In that silence, my grandmother's words echoed in my mind. What they take from you is only theirs to touch. What you build will be yours forever. She had given me a small, worn keychain that day, an old brass charm shaped like a phoenix. This, she said, is for when you rise from ashes they didn't think you'd survive. Something clicked inside me then. The rage and hurt, the sense of betrayal, became fuel. I would not stand by and let this define me. I packed my things, leaving behind the house I loved, the neighborhood that had watched my family's secrets unfold. I promised myself I'd start fresh, somewhere new, where no one could doubt my worth or question my voice. Walking away hurt more than I thought possible, but as I turned the key in the old lock one last time, I whispered under my breath, "You may have taken my home, Lauren, but you will never take my life. Not now, not ever." And with that, I stepped into the world that would one day belong entirely to me. I didn't have much when I left Elm Street, just a suitcase, a head full of ideas, and the tiny brass phoenix keychain clutched in my hand. I found an apartment in a bustling part of Chicago, a place where dreams didn't ask your family for permission. The walls were bare, the floors cold, and the smell of paint lingered in every corner, but it was mine to shape. Every night, after long hours of temp jobs and freelance gigs, I'd sit on the floor, the keychain glinting in the lamplight, and sketch out plans for the life I refused to let slip through my fingers. My mentor, Simone, found me by accident, or maybe by design. She was an established real estate developer, sharp-eyed and even sharper-tongued, but she had a rare way of seeing potential. "You have fire," she said the first time we met. "Don't let anyone smother it." Under her guidance, I learned to navigate the complicated world of property investment. I learned contracts, negotiations, the language of finance that had always intimidated me. There were nights when I cried, overwhelmed by the complexity and exhaustion, but Simone reminded me that struggle was a precursor to mastery. My first real breakthrough came with a small, rundown duplex on the north side. I poured my soul into it, scraping walls, negotiating with contractors, and staying awake into the early morning hours, measuring, painting, dreaming. When I finally turned the key to the first tenant, a family who looked as relieved as I felt the first rush of vindication that wasn't bitter. It was pure. It wasn't revenge. It was proof. Word of my projects grew quietly, whispered among local investors and potential buyers. I became known as someone who could see the hidden potential in properties no one else dared touch. Every sale, every renovation was a small victory, but I kept it mostly private, avoiding the scrutiny of my family and Lauren's ever-watchful eyes. My Instagram was sparse and deliberately modest. I didn't need their recognition. I needed my own truth reflected in the spaces I created. Years passed. The Phoenix keychain never left my bag. Every time I held it, I remembered the promise I'd made to myself: to rise, to own my life, to be untouchable by those who doubted me. Slowly, the dream expanded. Small duplexes turned into blocks of townhouses, blocks turned into entire streets, and streets, well, soon enough, streets could belong to me. I learned to celebrate quietly, a private grin as I signed deals over coffee, the smell of espresso mingling with fresh paint and polished wood. I bought my first car outright, a modest victory that felt enormous. I decorated my office with art I loved, not what anyone else deemed valuable. Each detail, every framed photograph, every plant, every carefully chosen desk, was a testament to the woman I had become: resilient, deliberate, unstoppable. And through it all, I never lost sight of the spark my grandmother had given me, the little phoenix that reminded me, every single day, that no one, not even Lauren, could take the life I was building. The knock on my office door was deliberate, confident, the kind of knock that assumes the person inside is still the same girl from Elm Street. I smiled to myself before answering. Lauren and my parents stood there, the same expressions they'd worn years ago, a mix of expectation and smugness, the kind that said, "She's still struggling, right?" "Hi," I said, my voice calm, almost casual. "Come in." Their eyes widened the moment they stepped inside. The first thing they noticed was the space itself: floor-to-ceiling windows that captured the city skyline, walls adorned with original artwork I'd collected over the years, sleek mahogany furniture that reflected both taste and accomplishment. My office wasn't just a workspace, it was a statement. A story told in every polished surface, every framed photograph, every carefully curated detail. Lauren's gaze lingered on the custom-built shelves behind me, where small models of my completed developments rested like trophies. Her lips parted, and for a moment, she looked like a child caught sneaking into someone else's candy store. I gestured to the view beyond the windows, letting the sunlight bounce off the streets I now owned. "Do you remember Elm Street?" I asked softly. Funny thing is, I didn't just rebuild. I expanded. The block across the way?
Mine.
The corner with the bakery?
Mine.
Every property I've touched since has been a part of a bigger plan. My parents shifted uncomfortably. The pride they had withheld for years had been replaced by disbelief, then by something closer to shame. They opened their mouths to speak, but I raised a hand. "Let me finish." Lauren's eyes narrowed, searching mine for the girl she thought had been defeated. But you," she stammered. "Yes," I said, letting the word hang like a bell in a quiet church. "I've built my own empire. The house you thought you took from me? That was only the beginning. You see, taking it made me realize I didn't need anyone's permission to claim what's mine. So, I did more than reclaim. I created." Her hands trembled slightly, a small, human detail that almost made me ache with the memory of the past, before the betrayal, before the pain had fueled me. My parents' faces were pale, their silence loud. They had assumed I would fail, that I would crawl back, begging. Instead, they were confronted by someone unrecognizable to them. Confident, composed, powerful. I let the silence linger, long enough for the weight of years to press down, for every unspoken insult, every betrayal, every dismissal to settle in the room. Then I walked to the window, tracing the streets I owned with a slow, deliberate hand. Everything I've built, I said, voice steady but resonant, started with a single lesson. They can take your home, your possessions, your comfort, but they cannot take your ambition, your will, or your fire. That is mine. And now, I paused, letting my words settle like dust in the sun. I own not just that house. I own the street. Every corner, every brick, every opportunity on it. Lauren's jaw dropped. My parents' mouths were open, but no sound came out. I could see the realization dawn in their eyes. The shock, the guilt, the recognition that the girl they thought powerless had become untouchable. I turned slowly, letting the office absorb the quiet weight of triumph. And don't worry, I added softly with a hint of ironic warmth. This isn't revenge. This is just the beginning of understanding the consequences of underestimating me. I watched them, the people who once assumed I was powerless, now standing in a room that radiated the life I had built without them. The air was thick with disbelief, and I let it settle for a moment, savoring the clarity of this new dynamic. I didn't need to raise my voice. Power had a way of speaking for itself. Let's be clear, I began, my tone calm, measured, but impossible to ignore. I'm not here to humiliate anyone. I'm here to establish the terms of any future interaction. Lauren swallowed hard, her hands twisting in front of her. My parents exchanged glances, the kind that said they were listening, finally realizing the girl they dismissed had become a woman they could neither ignore nor undermine. First, I continued, anyone who wants to maintain a relationship with me must respect boundaries. No lies. No manipulation. No taking what isn't offered freely. That includes my time, my space, and yes, my properties. Lauren opened her mouth, probably to argue, but I raised a hand. You lost the privilege of entitlement years ago. You may have wanted my house, but it doesn't mean you get my life. You will apologize, not for my benefit, but for your own growth. Acknowledge what you tried to take, and reflect on why you did it. I turned to my parents. You, too, need to recognize how your silence enabled betrayal. Support isn't enabling, and neglecting the responsibility to nurture and protect the people you love has consequences. You want a relationship with me? Then show up honestly with intention, not judgment. Each statement I made carried the weight of my years of struggle, the nights I spent exhausted, the moments of doubt that almost broke me, the countless times I had to start over. I spoke not from anger, but from authority and experience, and they could feel it. Finally, I said, letting a small, almost playful smile curve my lips, anyone wishing to step forward in my life must demonstrate growth. Pursue your passions, take accountability, and abandon the habits that led to pain. I'm not here to rescue anyone, but I will mentor, guide, and, yes, invest in people willing to rise. The key is effort, not expectation. I saw Lauren's shoulders slump slightly, a mixture of shame and understanding settling in. My parents nodded, slower, but with sincerity, finally absorbing the weight of what I had endured and the respect I had earned. Then I walked to the window, letting them follow my gaze across the streets I now controlled. This street, I said softly, represents more than property or wealth. It represents agency, choice, and the power of perseverance. You see what happens when you underestimate someone who refuses to be broken. You see what happens when resilience meets strategy. You see me. I turned back to them, my presence calm yet unshakable. I care about the people I love, but I will not allow old patterns to continue. These are the conditions for anyone who wishes to remain in my life. Understand them, respect them, and perhaps we can move forward together. For the first time in years, the room felt balanced. The weight of betrayal had shifted. The past was acknowledged and the future, my future, was firmly in my hands. Weeks passed after that meeting, and slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, things began to change. Lauren reached out, not with demands or accusations, but with genuine effort. She took small steps to rebuild herself, Enrolling in courses she had once dismissed as too challenging, volunteering in her community, even learning to listen before speaking. I watched from a distance at first, the same cautious optimism I had learned to give myself guiding me. My parents, too, began to shift. They apologized without hesitation, their words no longer hollow. They showed up, not just in my life, but in ways that mattered, celebrating milestones, offering help when asked, admitting mistakes without excuses. It wasn't perfect and it wasn't instant, but I realized that sometimes change is like planting seeds. You water them with patience and eventually, growth is undeniable. Through it all, my Phoenix keychain remained in my pocket. I touched it often, especially on days when doubt or fatigue crept in. It reminded me not just of the girl who had left Elm Street with nothing but a suitcase and determination, but of the woman I had become. Fearless, capable, and uncompromising in her pursuit of a life she could call her own. Standing on the balcony one evening, looking over the street that now bore my mark, I felt a quiet, profound satisfaction. Each brick, each corner, each property wasn't just a measure of wealth. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to lessons learned the hard way. I had turned betrayal into opportunity, doubt into strategy, and loss into power. I smiled softly, inhaling the scent of evening air tinged with coffee from a nearby cafe, feeling the city pulse beneath me. Memories of hurt surfaced briefly, like shadows at the edges of a room, but they no longer had the power to dominate. They were reminders, not shackles. I whispered to myself, a quiet mantra shaped by every struggle and triumph. They took my house, but I took my life back. And now I own the street. And in that moment, I didn't just own property. I owned my story, my choices, and the unstoppable rhythm of my own heart.